In this lesson, we're going to use the sine and cosine law and figure out when to use each one. So for the sine law, if we have a triangle that has two sides and one angle that is opposite to one of these sides, then we can use the sine law. So we have to have something that where we know an angle and we know the opposite side. We have to have something like that. And then in order to find the other angle or the other side, we have to again have opposites. In the second situation for law of sines, we could have two angles and one opposite side. So if we have angle 29 degrees, the opposite side is 11. And we want to be looking for something that's opposite. So opposite of 118 is the side x that we're looking for. For the law of cosines, if we have two sides and one included angle, then we will use the cosine law. So two sides and an included angle means that the angle is directly between the two sides that we know. So we have side 52, we know this given angle, and then we're looking for, and we also know the immediate side next to that. Okay, we also want to be looking for the opposite side of the angle that we know. Also with the law of cosines, if we know all three of the sides and we're looking for one of the angles, then we will use the law of cosines. So we'll do a bunch of examples now. So in each of the examples that we're going to do, we need to determine whether we're using the sine law or the cosine law. And once we determine that, then we can actually solve for our missing side or our missing angle. So for the first example, we have two angles and a side. And we have angle B of 44 degrees. Directly across from that is a known side of 7. And then we also have angle C of 53 degrees, and directly across from that is side X. So for this one here, we can use the sine law because we have two opposites that we can use. So I'm going to start with 7. And then directly across from that is sine 44. So 7 over sine 44, and this is going to equal the opposite side and angle. So we have side x over sine of 53 degrees. So now we're going to calculate sine 44 and sine 53. So we'll get 7 over 0.7986. And this equals, pardon me, I'm backwards. 7 over 0.6947. And this will equal x over 0.7986. Now we're going to cross multiply. So we'll have x times 0.6947. And this will equal the other two multiplied together, which is 5.5902. We want to divide out that 0.6947 from both sides. And we'll figure out that x is 8.05 units long. Okay, for the next example, we have two sides and the included angle. So side 17, the included angle of 91, and then side 28. And we're looking for that opposite side. So with this, because of the side angle side that we've got, we will use the cosine law. And to label the triangle, directly across from angle A is side A, across from angle B is side B, and across from angle C is side C. So our cosine law will be a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2ac times cosine of angle A. So now we want to substitute in what we know. So A is our x value. I'm going to change that to x squared. Side B is 17, so we'll square that. Side C is 28. We'll also square that. And then we'll subtract 2 times A, which is 17, times C, which is 28, times cosine of angle A, which is 91 degrees. So now we'll do our calculations. We're going to square our 17 and 28, and then we'll multiply these four values together. So we'll get x squared equals 289, plus 28 squared is 784. Then we're going to subtract these four values multiplied together. When we do that, cosine of 91 is actually a negative value because it's larger than 90 degrees. So when we calculate this, we actually get negative 16.6. So this is the first time that we've seen this value equal a negative. So now when we have minus a negative, those two are going to turn into a positive. So we're actually going to add all three numbers together in this example. So our x squared, when we add these three values together, we get 1089.6. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides, and the length of x equals 33. In the next example, we have quite a bit of information in this triangle. What we're looking for is the opposite side from the angle. So we have our 88 degrees, and opposite of that is 26. That will be one part of the proportion. Then from our missing angle, we also have an opposite side of 16 degrees. So because we have two sets of opposites, we can use the sine law. So I'm going to start with side 16.1, and this will go over sine theta, and this will equal the other two opposites, so 26 over sine 88. So notice that we didn't use the 21. That was just an extra piece of information that we don't need. So now I'm going to calculate the sine 88. So 16.1 over sine theta equals 26 over 0.9994. Now we're going to cross multiply, so 26 times sine theta. And this will equal 16.1 times 0.9994. And when we calculate that, we'll get 16.09034. We're going to divide out the 26 from both sides. When we do that, we will get 0.6189. And now we're finding the angle. So remember, when we find an angle, we need to use the inverse of sine. So that's our second function, or the shift button on your calculator. And theta will equal 38.2 degrees. In the next example, we have three sides that we know, and we're looking for angle C. So when we know three sides, that tells us that we're going to use the cosine law. And because we're looking for angle C, we have to start with side C. And I'm just going to label this: across from angle A is side A, across from angle B is side B. So because we're looking for angle C, we have to start our cosine law with side C. So we'll have c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times the cosine of c. So substitute in what we know. C is 6, so we'll have 6 squared. A is 14, so we'll have 14 squared, plus b, which is 9, so plus 9 squared. Minus 2 times a, which is 14, times b, which is 9, times our cosine of c, and we don't know what c is. We will call this theta because that's what it's represented with. So now we want to square our 3 values, and then we're going to multiply our 2 by 14 by 9. So when we do that, 6 squared is 6 times 6, so we get 36. 14 squared is 196, and 9 squared is 81. We're going to subtract 2 times 14 times 9, and that value is 252 times the cosine of theta. So next we want to add together these first two numbers, so 196 and 81. Remember, we don't subtract the 252 because it's being multiplied with the cosine of theta, so that is all one piece that's connected. So we'll end up with 36 equals 277 minus 252 times the cosine of theta. The next part, we want to start to isolate our cosine of theta, so we're going to subtract our 277 from both sides. When we do that, we get negative 241 equals negative 252 times cos theta. We're going to divide out that negative 252 on both sides. And when we do that, we get 0.9563 equals cosine of theta. And again, because we're finding the angle, we need to use the inverse function of cosine. So your second function or your shift button on your calculator. And when we do that, we should get an angle of 17 degrees. In this next example, we have two angles and one side that we know, and we are missing the side AB. So that's what we're looking for. So I want to check the sine law first. So I've got my 58 degrees, which is directly across from side X. So that's one part of the proportion. And then I have 93 degrees directly across from that. I don't have any information. And the side of 16 directly across from that is angle B, and I also don't have that information. But we can still use the sine law because we are given two angles, and we can easily figure out this third angle of B just by using 180 degrees. So angle B is 180 minus 58 minus 93. When we calculate that, we'll get 29 degrees. So now that we have this third angle of 29 degrees, now we have the other set of opposites that we need for the sine law. So I'm going to start with side X over sine 58, and this will equal 16 over sine 29. We're going to calculate out our sine 58 and sine 29. So we'll end up with x over 0.8480. And this will equal 16 over 0.4848. Now we'll cross multiply. So we'll have x times 0.4848. And this will equal 16 times 0.8480 multiplied together, which is 13.568. We're going to divide out the 0.4848 from both sides. When we do that, we will end up with x equals 28. In the next example, we know we know two angles and one side, and we're looking for a missing side. So again, if we check for the opposites, we have our angle of 79 degrees, which is opposite from 32 centimeters. And then we have our 45-degree angle, which is also opposite from our side of x. So again, because we have our two opposites that will make up our proportion, we can use the sine law. So we will have x over sine 45 equals 32 over sine 79. So calculate the sine 45 and sine 79. So we'll get x over 0.7071, and this equals 32 over 0.9816. So cross multiply. So we'll get x times 0.9816. And this will equal the other half of our cross multiplication. So 32 times 0.7071, which is 22.6272. Now divide out that 0.9816 from both sides. When we do that, x will equal 23.05, and we know in this example we're working with centimeters, so 23.05 centimeters. In this next example, we are looking for angle theta, or angle B, and we know three sides of the triangle. So when that happens, we know three sides of the triangle. We're looking for one of the angles. We use our cosine law. So I'm just going to label the sides of the triangle. So opposite of angle A is side A, opposite of angle B is side B, and opposite of angle C is side C. So because we're looking for angle B, we have to start our cosine law with side B. So we'll have b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac times cosine of b. So substitute in what we know. So our b is 17, a is 10, and c is 11. So make sure that we square all three of those numbers. We're going to subtract 2 times our a value of 10 times our c value of 11. And we're trying to find cosine of angle theta. Okay, so now square our three values. So 17 squared is 289. This will equal 100, which is 10 squared. 11 squared is 121. We're also going to multiply our three values of 2, 10, and 11. So again, because we're subtracting, we need to subtract 220 times cosine of theta. So in this one, we want to add 100 plus 121. We don't want to subtract the 220, again, because it's being multiplied by cosine theta, and those two are attached right now. So add these together. So we'll get 289 equals 221 minus 220 times cosine of theta. So now we're going to subtract the 221 from both sides, and we will get positive 69 equals negative 220 times cosine theta. So normally we have a negative on this right-hand side. This time we don't. So when we divide out that negative 220, we will end up with a negative value. So we'll end up with negative 0.3136 equals cosine B. And that's okay that this side is negative. That just means that the angle that we're looking for is larger than 90 degrees. So when we're looking for the angle, we need to use our second function, or our shift button, to find the inverse cosine. So angle B, or theta in this case, is 108.3 degrees. So in this next example, we have two sides and the included angle. So 20 degrees plus our included angle of 139, and that leads directly into 13. And we're also looking for the opposite side of angle 139. So two sides in the included angle shows us that we're going to use the cosine law. And because we're working with angle C, we have to start our cosine law with side C. So we'll have c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab times cosine of c. So side A is going to be our 20, and side B will be 13. So again, substitute in what we know. So we've got c squared equals 20 squared plus 13 squared minus 2 times 20 times 13 times cosine of 139 degrees. So we'll square our 20 and 13. When we do that, we will get c squared equals 400 plus 169. We are going to multiply these four values together. So we still have subtracting. Again, because our cosine is larger than 90 degrees, that will give us a negative value. So when we multiply these four values together, we actually get negative 392.4. So again, when that happens, our minus and negative will turn into a positive, and we will add these three values together. So our c squared equals 961.4. When we add those three together, we'll take the square root of both sides. So our c value will be 31. So just to summarize, we will use the sine law if we are given two sides and an opposite angle. We'll also use the sine law if we're given two angles and a side. We can use the cosine law if we're given two sides and the included angle. And we'll also use the cosine law if we are given three sides and we're looking for an angle.